coming through. And I'm just going to test my mic quick because there's nobody really watching yet. So it's a good chance to do audio checks. So we're not talking, with bad audio the whole time. Mine sounds good. Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we sounded pretty even this time. So getting this figured out. Yeah. Coming through on Facebook.
No, we sound good. Awesome. Don't know if anybody's watching yet, but I think we can just get started. People will congregate, gather in. Well, welcome to those who are watching, whether you're live or watching the recording afterwards. I'm Jacob Daniel here with Rob Coburn for the Take Human Action PA podcast. We thank you for tuning in, however you tune in, whether it's live or afterwards. We have a bit of a impromptu episode tonight. We hadn't done one in like a couple weeks, and so we wanted to do one. We have some stuff in the works. We have some candidates here in PA and some things going on here in PA that we have episodes planned out over the next month that we're going to do. We're also going to be having Angela McCardle on at the end of the month. That announcement will be coming out soon too. So there's some stuff happening in the works, but it's a crazy time right now in the party and the movement. Lots of things going on. There was Pork Fest, there's Freedom Fest coming up. Everybody's schedules are just crazy and hectic. I know mine are. So there's no guest tonight, although we do hope that if you are watching live that maybe you'll interact, put some comments out there, some questions that we would love to respond to. But this episode is going to be a bit more like informative, a bit more us talking about things related to the party and the philosophy of libertarianism. And actually, that's how we wanted to start out. We don't want to just assume that everybody who is going to watch this show, this channel, people that are checking out the Mises Caucus, people who are checking out the Libertarian Party, a lot of them might still be, what is libertarian? And it's one of those words that gets thrown around a lot, right? Like it's like you hear people use the word libertarian to describe anyone as far right as like Ben Shapiro maybe, and as far left as Noam Chomsky. And so it can be like, well, that seems like, total opposite. So what the heck does the word mean? And, so we wanted to start out today talking a bit about that. I'm not going to go too much into like a historical overview because that would be like, more like a documentary style podcast that, we're not prepared to do tonight. I'm not here to so much talk to you about like the, history of the term, how it developed, that's an interesting topic, but not for tonight. But we just want to talk about like, a introduction to what libertarianism is, and also to kind of lay out what it isn't. And it's kind of important when you're defining things to do both of those, right? Like you have to kind of have that contrast. If you don't establish the borders of what something is, and then also like, well, this is libertarianism and this isn't, well, then that's what leads to confusion. So we're going to do a little bit of defining and in both of those fashions. I don't know what's the best. This is all impromptu. We're literally doing this spur of the moment. I mean, should we start out by defining like what the word liberty means, maybe? And because that's kind of like the root of what libertarianism is, and maybe build it from there.
That is something that I think about a lot. What is liberty, and why don't we know really what it is? I think that is a good place to start. It's probably the staple of our namesake, so it might be good to figure out what actually we're doing here. I don't. What do you think? What do you think liberty is?
Well, when I think of the word like liberty, I guess I would like a simple definition would be the ability to act unrestricted. Right. Like if I like to me, and it's like liberty is almost like broken down into like subcategories of what your freedoms are and what your rights are, so to speak. And it's like, and they're kind of like they're almost like different ways to describe the same thing. But I think the core underlying thing that like these terms are describing is like the ability of people to act as they choose, so long as they are not hurting anybody, without people trying to stop them. I think an analogy I've once heard used is like, it's like you can literally do everything, including waving your fist in the air. The conflict comes when your fist hits somebody else. That's where your rights end and somebody else's begin. But yeah, to me, I guess that's like the simple definition of what liberty would be. It's just like the ability to act uncoerced. I think it's also important to define what rights are, because that's something that kind of comes into it, because it's like
sure.
Yeah, I mean, like, and
a very confused term as of these
yeah.
days. But before we get there, real fast, that comment you were thinking of, that's the explanation for an assault. Is it a have you put the idea in somebody's mind that they're going to get hit? That's just where that came from. But I just want to add one thing to what you said there about what liberty is, because I go one step a bit more fundamental and think that liberty is the freedom of thought, the ability to cognitively act. You have to have the free thought before you can even act. So in a world where thought crime is not so much of a joke, I think it's important to realize that liberty really is your right, and why it's a right is because it's your mind, it's your thoughts, it's your freedom to think and then manifest those through acting. So liberty, and that's why I think it's so important to know it can't be separated from a person, and why it's a right, which we get into. But
right, yeah. Well, this is why, like, Mises talks about like what's the expression, like human action, and like that's the name of our podcast, the Take Human Action podcast. And these terms don't make sense if you don't define them in terms of human acting, and that's kind of like the whole basis of liberty has to be defined, I think, among the basis of, or the understanding of, like, praxeology and the study of humans acting, because otherwise you're talking about like abstract, thoughts and concepts that, like maybe like sound nice, but like they don't have any
meaning or
right, exactly, like the ability to, we can talk about all these things, but they're just a fart in the wind. It's just a fart in the wind if it's not like applied to actual humans interacting and doing things. And so it's like, like Mises put it this way, like you can just basically start out, like, if you're going to have some kind of starting point for any kind of like philosophy, any kind of worldview, like the starting point is that humans act, right? No matter what, inevitably they are acting, and they're acting based upon some sort of self-interest. Doesn't mean that it's always, and it's rational in the sense of like they are doing things that they are deeming is in their self-interest. Doesn't mean it's rational in like some objective analysis.
It doesn't mean their analysis was correct. It just means that their thought, their action was the product of rational analysis to achieve a beneficial end. The end may have been misinterpreted or misguided, and in fact, in hindsight, incorrect. But it was made for a benefit, a perceived benefit. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, like there's a state of uneasiness or dissatisfaction. It's like, because like nobody acts without looking at the potential future of the consequences of their action and thinking like, this action will put me in a better spot than I'm at right now. And they could be wrong. Like you said, they could be mistaken. They might take an action and then, a minute later, a day later go, that actually didn't increase my well-being, or that actually didn't accomplish the end I wanted. It did the opposite. And so they learn from it, but they do it from that presupposition that it will.
Yeah.
And I think it's useful to have an understanding of that, of like what praxeology is, because then we can understand what liberty is. And I think liberty
Yeah.
is the ability of people, of humans, to act. You know what I mean? That's why I defined it that way, because
Okay.
if you just define liberty as like being free, well, that's almost like a circular definition. And like
Yeah.
that's what, people often define liberty. It's just like, well, it's just like being able to do what you want. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know, like it's too like whimsical. Like we have to have some kind of like, meat to the definition, I think.
Yeah. Well, this self, benefiting purpose, that was, I think, where Ayn Rand meant to go with her whole, every act is a selfish act.
Right.
But I think that was kind of the root of the whole thing. But if you think of, gee, there's a point there. But yeah, you don't choose a thing because it's actually perceived to be harmful or even um meaningful. You do it for to achieve a benefit, to achieve an end. But very good.
Yeah, yeah, but just the Google definition I looked up says liberty is the power or scope to act as one pleases,
Yeah.
which is, I guess another way to put it. But
Yeah.
um, again, I think it's really important to emphasize it's in the context of humans being able to act upon their interests, which also means like they have to be able, like to your point, they have to be able to also think freely.
Right.
And that's why free speech
Yeah.
is such an important thing. That's why
Yeah.
censorship is such a bad thing, because if people can't think freely,
Yeah.
well, then they're being coerced on a deeper level to be like, they can't actually think things through, or think upon certain actions. Those actions are forbidden from, to them, in a sense of like, um, they're not even allowed, like even if it's something they would reject, they're not rejecting it out of coming to a rejection of it out of a rational set of processes in their mind. They're just like, well, though this is, I'm culturally shamed for even asking this question or thinking this thing, so I don't think about it. And but that's a bit of a rabbit hole, but I like that you brought it up, because like that's the foundation of action is thinking, right? I mean, and again, not all thoughts are good thoughts, but you have to be able to, it's like people make mistakes on the way to success, right? I think like Jordan Peterson once put it this way. He's like, most new ideas are stupid, but you have to be able to make the stupid ideas to, like you have to have like 100 stupid ideas to get to one good one. And like some, like, um, if people are afraid to try something because it's stupid or they're afraid of being wrong, they might, that like the failures are sometimes an important part of the creative process of, getting to a place where you figure out the correct answer. Looks like I lost Rob for some reason. I'm guessing technical difficulties, but I'll continue on a little bit without him. I'm sure he'll make it back. Um, but yeah. So then we take the word liberty, and then it's like, all right, well, the word libertarian has the word liberty as the root in it. Oh, there's Rob. Hey, I lost you, brother.
I hope that solved my little clip in there. Way too much stuff open. So where are we at?
I was about to try to segue into okay, we've defined what liberty is, so now let's define what libertarianism is.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
before we get there, you brought up a good question about what you were going to get into, what is rights, and I kind of held you up. Um, but I really think that's a very important distinction to add here, because this is where the importance of liberty being at the root, it's thought, because to me, a right is those things that are so tied to you as your humanity that they cannot be denied a person, because it is what a person is. That's what I believe a right is. A right is those things that are so a part of you that a government cannot deny them, and nor do they uh, have the ability or any authority to grant them, because they are you in your nature.
I have to unmute myself. Yeah, I think it's a good way of looking at it. I think rights. I've always defined rights as like a good way to look at them are they're in entitlements. They're things that um, that you can claim as like being yours from like a pre like it's already decided. It's already been established and agreed upon that like these things are yours to claim as your own, so to speak. And that's why I believe you have a right to self ownership. Believe you have a right to liberty. I think you have a right to the pursuit of happiness, so to speak. You don't have a right to other people's stuff. And so this is kind of like this is actually a good segue. Like when we start defining what rights are and what rights aren't, I think that is what libertarianism is. You know what I mean? Like libertarianism is kind of like the philosophy of liberty and the philosophy that is like this ongoing conversation from different philosophers and people over the years having a conversation about liberties and about rights and defining what you do have a right to and what you don't have a right to and what does constitute things that you can do that are like you can do these things freely, and then the things that well you can't do that because what you're actually doing is infringing upon the freedoms or the rights of other people. So it's kind of like libertarianism is almost like this study of people interacting and determining what actions are in conflict with liberty on an individual level and which ones aren't, and then what rights you do have and what rights you don't have. I think that's kind of like like it's not again like these aren't we're not giving just strict textbook definitions here. We're kind of like trying to explain these things in our own words because like that's how people think. Like you can read textbook definitions on your own. You don't need to come to a podcast to get the we're going to read the Wikipedia page on libertarianism here.
No, you need to hear my definition. Yeah, I think you've got a good atmosphere there of the rights, but I like to think of them and talk about them a bit more fundamentally, because it gets to the root of why they're or inalienable. Why they are not something that we get permission for. Why they're I think there are three rights, and from that, every other right extends. If we narrow this down and just protect these three things, and we understand the right of every individual to these three things, it solves almost every issue that arises. And those are the right to life, your right to life, your right to liberty, and your right to property. And if those to me are the three things a human being is. You have to have your life to be here. So
well, yeah, it's self ownership, right? Like that's another way of saying like I mean, and I like the argumentation ethics proof of like self ownership. You know what I mean? Like where it's like because a lot of times like there can be this hurdle between like it's kind of like the is-ought paradigm where it's just like how can you get an ought from an is, and so it's like whenever you're developing some kind of philosophy, it's like well how can you establish like that first axiom without just making it a statement of faith or something you take as just very like a pre like being what's the term a priori I think is the term so and
self-define
right. So I think argumentation ethics is a good way of getting after that because it's just like okay well let's take a human action praxeological observation here. If you at all try to debate against somebody's philosophy, against somebody's actions, like at the minute you act and you're criticizing another person for something they think or do, you have just demonstrated the like that you act out self-ownership and property rights.
Yeah.
Because if you go to another person, you're criticizing them, like you're giving up some things through your actions in a like just from the get go, like a priori, like
Yeah.
your actions show these things.
Right.
You're recognizing that person as sovereign to
Yeah.
like and in control of their mind, in control of their faculties, that they can the words they're saying are theirs and they're choosing to say them. And you're also, saying like, well, it's preferable for you to be saying things that are true versus things that are untrue.
Yeah.
But there's this whole list of things that, like, the minute you engage in an argument or a criticism,
Yeah.
that you're inherently accepting. And
Yeah.
those things basically establish that, like, okay, well, you recognize that people own themselves. And
Yeah.
really, that's like, and if you disagree with that, okay, like, try
Right.
to argue with me about it. But then, like, by arguing with me about it, aren't like
Yeah.
how explain how you're not demonstrating it.
Right.
And I think some people, ironically, like the people that I think often, like, they're sometimes like my fellow Christians, because I'm a Christian, will get a little triggered by the idea of self ownership, which is like, well, everything belongs to God. It's like, okay, well, it's, but that's a whole different discussion. I've talked about that on my own podcast.
Well,
But it's like, but if you are a Christian, just the quick answer is just like, we're talking about horizontal relationships here. If you believe in a God, that's a whole different category, okay? But we're
well,
talking about person to person. Nobody owns me. No person owns me. The only person that can have a claim to me and my body is me. Now, if you want to say that God owns the universe and thus owns you, okay, but that has nothing to do with interactions between people. Because even if, like, let's say God does own me, well, God doesn't grant you the authority to own me, right?
yeah.
So really, that's a distraction. That's a red herring. With
Well,
self ownership is a valid description of our relationships between people.
yeah.
Is how I
Well,
would put it.
I mean, even from a Christian standpoint, if you want to say that the the ownership is in and of itself is not yours, well, he sure gave you one hell of a lease through the free will. Is it? Would he not? That's a rather open ended lease.
Right. Yeah. Yep. But
Yeah.
that's an
Yeah.
interesting topic for
Yeah.
for another day.
Very good. Yeah.
But yeah. But go ahead. I've been rambling for a bit.
Yeah, hop on in the argumentation. I think, man, that was a fantastic point. I think the one thing that you just add to it is that it was if you engage in in argument, you have mutually agreed to the good faith meritus argument, and as soon as you employ logical fallacy, you've violated the um that agreement. But just want to throw that in there.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah, but
Yep.
so we have liberty. Liberty is the unrestricted ability to act. We have right. Right is the this thing that is you know unrestricted, undeniable. These things that you have every free ability to do. Is that where we're at?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think libertarianism is a like a philosophical exercise in describing these things, basically.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, when if we're trying to be logical and we're trying to be consistent about what so like, if we agree with self-ownership as kind of like that foundation, then and that goes hand in hand with, like, the ability, then, like, you own yourself, so you have the right to do things with your body, to do things with your labor. We can establish property rights from that, because if you own your labor, then things that you create with your labor, well, nobody else should have. You can't make an argument for why somebody else would have a
Right.
claim to that which you make with your labor. I mean, like, if I put in blood, sweat, and tears to build myself a cart, and I'm using that cart to, like, haul my cabbages and my radishes and my onions from my garden all the way back to my house, or to haul them to market to barter and trade with people, and then you come and you're like, oh, I really like that cart, I think it should be mine. It's like, well, now we're having a like that's an interaction, right? Like, that's a human action, somebody's saying, like, I've created the cart already through my set of, me wanting to do something, and then I did it and I mixed my labor with it. And then somebody else says, "Oh, I like that card. I want it. I'm just going to take it." So,
Yeah,
all
yeah,
right, well, how do we, like, there's two claims to this property. Who has the rightful claim?
right.
And obviously, like, everybody is going to answer, well, the person who created it, because it was their labor that created it. And, if you try to say that, like, the minute you try to say there's any instance where you can be entitled to the labor of somebody else, well, now what you're saying is that people actually don't own themselves and they don't own their labor. Because if I can be entitled to the cart that you built, well, then you don't have ownership over your body anymore. I have basically like, I am basically, post hoc, you could say, I enslaved you insofar as, like, the time that you took to gather the materials, to put them together, and to build that cart. I basically have violated your self
Mm,
ownership in that instance, and I have robbed you of, I have violated your freedoms, your rights.
yeah, yeah. That's a good way to look at it. I'd take a similar approach about the whole who owns the fruits of your labor. You know, the claim that um, that there's some tax or something on it would be to say, you know, you're born into this world, you come in with no debt yet, but then the moment that you try to provide for yourself, whatever you create to sustain, whatever you build to live in, well, a piece of that, a percentage of that is owed to the rest of society. That's kind of the claim, isn't it? Um, and in that way, it's like an extortion racket. If you try and take care of yourself, you got to give us our piece. And I, I don't know if it's a rental thing, but but
Right.
I want
And
to get too
so,
far into that. But
yep. And so, like, basically, like, libertarianism, then, like, we expand it beyond just, like, these simple
mm,
interactions between, like, and I think most people kind of agree, like, on a, you know, one person level. Well, yeah, that's theft. Yeah, that's a violation of that person's rights. There's very few people that would try to make the counter argument to that. Where
yeah,
it gets tricky is if I go, okay, there's a person who is struggling. They've fallen on hard times. They don't have enough money to pay their rent. They don't have enough money to put food on the table. Their electric bill is past due. There's notice for their electric and water to be shut off. And living next door is this guy who has way more money than he needs. He's got this really nice house, got TV in every room. His refrigerators are full. His house is paid off. And he makes a good living for himself. He has more money than he needs to survive. And then people will then go, well, it's just for us to have this, some kind of apparatus, some kind of societal apparatus where we take the wealth from this person who has more than what they need, in our opinion, to give it to the person who is downtrodden. And on the surface, people, I think, they look at this, but they're just making it like, I don't want to even assign malintent or, like, evil to the hearts of these people. I think they're making a utilitarian kind of, like, well, this person has more than they need, this person doesn't, so, like, just, like, they almost think, well, I would do that if I was in that person's shoes, so they should just do it.
yeah, right, yeah,
But the problem is, and this is what libertarians talk about, it's like, well, all right, we can agree with you perhaps that, like, maybe it would be, like, righteous or commendable for the person who's well off to donate some of their money to the person who's less fortunate. That might be true. Um, but the problem is you're introducing a third entity, and the third entity is violating the rich person's rights in every same exact way that the first example I gave about the cart, was. Just
yeah,
as much as it would be wrong for me to take, the cart from Rob Like, well, let's say like I don't have a cart and it's like, my feet are all banged up and I'm tired and I don't know how to make carts. I'm not good at it. And like all my carts fall apart and like I make my carts with square wheels because it's just I don't know how to make a round wheel. And so it's like, I'm just struggling and I don't have enough food to feed my families because I can't make it to market in time to trade. And it's just like I'm really on hard time. But like, oh man, Rob has this cart that would solve my problems, man.
Right.
So that's why I'm going to take it. Everyone's like, well, no, like, yeah, you're falling on hard times and maybe Rob should, if he's a good friend, should help you out. But you can't just take his cart.
Yeah.
But the problem is people are somehow they've made an exception in their mind where it's okay for a third entity that we call the state or government to come in and to basically do the same thing in the card analogy when it comes to like someone who is, in a downtrodden situation, that they're going to take from somebody who has more and give it to somebody who has less. And it's not that we don't have empathy for people who have less. But it's just like, if you justify, because like, let's not beat around the bush. What you're justifying with a state isn't just like a knocking on this guy's door and asking him to give money. You know what I mean? People assume it's like, well, the guy would voluntarily pay, if he voluntarily pays his taxes, no one's making him. It's like, well, ask the rich guy what happens if he doesn't pay his taxes. Ask anybody what happens if you don't pay your taxes. Or, God forbid you pay too little. You know what I mean? They don't care if you pay too much, of course, but God forbid you pay too little. Make some kind of error, you forget to report something, you file something incorrectly. Eventually there is a person with, at the end of every, like, this is something that we need to explain. All government is, all the state is, at the end of the day, is a entity of coercion and compulsion. It's an entity of force. And so this is kind of like, what libertarianism mostly talks about is the state. I'm not saying it's the only thing libertarian, like libertarians are against what we would call, well, I don't want to get too ahead of myself. We'll get to the nap in a second. Go ahead.
Before you get into the nap, I just want a little bit clear about what government is. It looks like all these laws and all these officials and all this, society, but really it's just government is the entity with the monopoly on the use of force. They're the only ones who can come to you unprovoked and say, you have not done this the way we have instructed, and now we can use force to compel you to do so. And I think that's it's a very necessary bit to understand if you're going to understand what libertarianism is and what it is exactly that we're against. If the government is just the use of force, because you can't if you can't have the force aspect, then what good is a law? And it's just this thing that's out there that, please somebody listen to this, but only with the the compulsion through the claimed authority to use force does it enter the realm of government.
Well, like, a good mental exercise to ask is, if the state didn't have this law, would you do it anyway? If the answer is yes, you don't really need the law, do you? If the answer is no, well, why no? Because if the state's making you do you wouldn't do otherwise, is that moral? And so this is a good segue into like one of the most, like, the central principles of libertarian philosophy. Like what we kind of like, it's like kind of like the key axiom that's kind of like central is the NAP, or that's an acronym for the non-aggression principle. I've often said I wish there was a word spelled NIAP, because I think the non-aggression principle is too vague, because it's like, I'm not against aggression in all cases, because there are times where aggression is actually needed. What I'm against is like it should be the NEAP. Like I'm against the initiation of aggression. I'm against the initiation of force.
Right.
So it's not so much that we're against all. We're not pacifists. Libertarian. Now some are. There are some libertarians who might be pacifists. I think we tend to probably lean pacifist insofar as like we prefer nonviolence. We prefer non-aggressive solutions, but we of course don't deny the right to self-defense. And the non-aggression principle is not against using force if it is in defense, if it's used in like a restoring justice, bringing restitution to a wrong. That's the proper use of force. What we're against is the first use of force or the initiation of force. That is what libertarians fundamentally oppose. And that's why we criticize the state probably more than almost anything, because that's what the state does. The state comes in as a third actor in almost every situation and makes people do what they wouldn't do voluntarily, or in the cases where it's making people do what they would do voluntarily, it's an unnecessary redundancy.
It would only be in those less common miscalculated decisions that the person would, the law is needed for anyway. But I just want to add real quick to your statement about the non-aggression principle, and just to clarify, the non-aggression principle stands for the notion that it is unjustified. There's no justification for the use of force to achieve your political and personal goals. So if you commit an act of force against a person unprovoked for any means, for any reason, you're the aggressor in it, and therefore that's an unjustified act. And through that way, the enforcement mechanism of the government, the use of force to enforce their laws, is the illegitimate part of the government, which is where the rest of it I think falls from. So if you can't initiate force, and government is just the initiation of force, therefore you see where we're headed here.
Yep. And I would say like to sum up this, like my last words, I'll give you the last words on like what libertarianism is, because God, we could just go on for the full the rest of the night kind of like expounding upon it, but I wanted to just be like an intro to it, and like a summary. To me, like two of my favorite expressions is like libertarianism is really just simply, it's wrong to hurt people and take their stuff, right? And it's just, there's no exceptions. And it's like, there, and God, I'm having a brain fart on what's the second. It was in my head and it just just vanished. God, I can't remember. It was something related to, like, I know what the expression's talking about. It completely just like came out of my mind live on video. But just like that nobody owns anybody else, right? And nobody has, like, we all have the same rights. There aren't, what I think libertarians ultimately reject is kind of like, there's no special class of people. Like, we're all the same in the sense of our rights. And the problem with government, the problem with the state, is it almost is founded on what I would say is a fallacy that's not founded in logic, that's not founded in reality, that some people have rights that you and I don't have. Like, it's wrong for me to steal from you, but if I call myself a government and say, well, I'm stealing from you because I have to build a road, does that make it okay? No, it doesn't make it okay. But when this special group of people called the state do it, we're supposed to, because of all these justifications like the social contract and this and that, that was the other saying, was what libertarians reject is the idea of ends justifying the means. And I think that's what, there's a lot of people who believe in a state, who believe in, whether it's on the right and they believe in a giant border wall, they believe in a giant military, they believe in using the state to push certain social norms or certain religious views or whatever, or if it's the left and they believe in a giant welfare state and they believe in universal health care, they believe in Social Security and all this. What they're doing is basically saying, well, sure, the state, like if they're going to be honest, they're saying, yeah, the state is a mechanism of coercion and we're making people do things they wouldn't do voluntarily, but we have to. Right. Because the ends justify the means, because taxes are the price we pay for a civilized society. And it's like, well, if what you call civilized is having a giant entity of force that compels people through the threat of violence to do things, we might have different definitions of what peace and civilized are. Because to me, peace is social cooperation, which means people have to be acting voluntarily. They can't be compelled. They can't be coerced.
On that there, I think that we've hit the crux of where people who go down the path of identifying as libertarians really come to the point where they make that decision is when they realize, the things that the major parties, the mainstream view is that we say the Democratic Party is good on welfare, and we say that the Republican Party is good on, they give themselves a pat on the back that we're good on, the war thing. But really, what they're talking about is they're talking about how good they are at the thing that they can compel the most. So we've got this twisted thing in the status quo view of our what is good about, what does government do that's good? Why is it good? And it's always people identify their side of things being good at the thing that they compel the most. And it's a very backwards view, and the people who figure that out, I think, are the ones who become libertarians.
Right. I think libertarians are the ones that like they push things to the bottom. Like they want to they want to have a philosophy that's consistent from like that foundational first principle all the way up. And to me, that libertarianism is the only consistent philosophy when it comes to describing how people ought to live as far as relationship to one another, because there's no exceptions, right? Like when you have to create all these exceptions and accept this and not in these cases, a lack of consistency, I think, shows a fundamental problem, right? Like if it's if I fix your car, like I'm a mechanic by trade, so like if I fix somebody's transmission and go, hey, so here's the bill, it's $4,000, and the transmission works now, except in the rain and except if you're going up hills, and also don't go above 45 miles an hour, and also don't drive for more than 20 minutes, and also make sure that you add a quart of fluid to it. It's like, it's a lot of exceptions for you to say that something is fixed, except for all of these things. So when you when you have to say something, you know what I mean? Like with libertarianism, it's like it's wrong to hurt people and take their stuff. Like it's wrong to initiate force. Period. Like there's no exception. If you need to defend yourself from somebody who already initiated force, that's okay. There's no contradiction there. So that's how I'd summarize it. So that's kind of like the overview of libertarianism. And the Mises Caucus, obviously, we're part of the Libertarian Party. But a lot of us came to liberty because we first were introduced to the philosophy, first introduced to the principles by the great Ron Paul, who we worship, we idolize. I know before I go to bed every day, I get down and pray to Ron Paul, and I have a picture of him that I cuddle. That's what our some of our critics think that we probably do. I actually don't. What's funny is I don't think I actually have anything Ron Paul in my house.
No.
So it's I don't have any old campaign signs. I don't have any Ron Paul T-shirts. I don't have any books or anything about or written by Ron Paul. So I mean, it's actually all it's just there's a secret shrine in my closet for not for Ron Paul. It's for Michael Heiss.
Well, I wouldn't have thought.
God, I'm trolling right now. I need to stop.
Yeah. Well, you're right. I think the Mises Caucus is mostly made of those people who were brought into this idea of of the message of liberty, which is the premise for the Libertarian Party. We were brought in through Ron Paul and his primarily
or
his 2008 and 2012 presidential campaign.
or like I wasn't brought in by Ron Paul into libertarianism, but I was brought in by Ron Paul's like second generation people of Ron Paul. Like I was brought in by
Yeah.
Dave Smith
Right,
and
right.
Michael Heisen. So it's like when I say Ron Paul is like what brought me to liberty, it's like it's indirectly, but it's still like I don't think that Dave Smith and the Mises Caucus would exist without Ron Paul,
Yeah.
and they're what made me libertarian. So
Well,
it
it's
goes
his
to Ron
message.
Paul.
What it is,
What's his
it's the
message, right?
It's his message. It's Ron Paul's message that here are the things that that need to be addressed, and here's how they become addressed through the libertarian philosophy. He had his list of crucial, imminent issues, and he addressed each one through the libertarian philosophy, and it was a very attractive message because it was sincerely delivered, and it made the clearest logical sense, especially when you just took a minute to look at your surroundings and apply it to what he was saying. It was a very powerful thing, which is why the Mises Caucus is so adamant about wanting to have an effect on the messaging, I think. Yeah.
Right. So, and that's what I'm always telling people is like, we just defined libertarianism for about 30 minutes and we didn't bring up the party at all, which, I'm sorry, like the word libertarian, and we didn't do a historical deep dive into the development of that word,
Right.
but
right.
like there was no libertarian party when the term libertarian was made and when the philosophy was made.
Yeah.
So, the Libertarian Party that we're a part of, I think if you're going to name something after yourself, if you're going to name something that you're like a group you make, an entity you make after something, you should probably try to mimic it, right? I mean, so like a good example is like I'm a Christian, which means like I'm supposed to mimic Christ. If I was a if I was going to say I was I'm trying to think of another example, like a follower of, I can't think of a good analogy. If a sports analogy, like if I say I'm a Ravens fan, well, then like I probably shouldn't go and vote for the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? Because that would, nobody likes the Steelers because Pittsburgh's dumb. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, I see how it is. I don't remember that.
But you know what I mean? Like if you're going to name something after something, like, well, you should follow after the thing that you named it after. If
it's a little bit more than that though, because what good is being a libertarian without the focus on liberty? If this organization forgets what its purpose is, it's going to follow the path of every other organization. Why unionizing is great, but a union is bad. A political party is great unless if the organization the focus of it is its perpetuation rather than the constituency. So what good are we being libertarians if it's not for this liberty thing?
Yeah, exactly. But so we focus on messaging and we talk, and like the reason we do that is because we talk about like what brought a lot of us here was Ron Paul, and like what Ron Paul did for liberty was not pass legislation.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't help get a lot of people elected. What he did was inspire people and lead them to the principles because of how bold and effective his messaging was. We have Adam Nutter.
Yeah.
Hey, man.
Adam.
What's up?
Yeah.
I'm gonna change the layout now. We got a third person here.
What's going on?
So how you doing, Adam?
Good. We recorded like 3 podcasts in a row. Sorry, I'm late.
Well, now it's number 4, and this is part of your contract with the Mises Caucus. Is you're stuck in your studio, chained to the chair, and you keep putting out content, man. Like you're not allowed to leave.
Broke my fucking microphone.
You know,
What's happening?
to the point you were just talking about, Jacob, what Ron Paul did was I would look at the existing real big issues and then just apply the philosophy to it. And I think that's why I connected with people, because it gave a real answer to the very real things that were happening in their life. And it wasn't just he was out there just blurting out from A to B the libertarian. What the principle is. He said this is our issue we're facing and we all feel, and here is the answer through this mechanism. And I think that's why he connected so hard with people, because we're in the middle of the war thing, and he's like, oh, everybody's just screaming about how good the war is, and he's like, as a matter of fact, we shouldn't be here.
Right. And then the Giuliani moment, which is so amazing to go back and watch, was just the clutching of the pearls. It's like Ron Paul, would Mr. Ron Paul please apologize for disrespecting our troops in America? And Ron's like, no, I won't fucking apologize. Like, we shouldn't be there. They're doing what we would do.
Right.
And like that was the boldest. That was wildly unpopular for him to say at the time. Like wildly. I remember growing up in a Republican household, and questioning the military, questioning the wars and stuff. Like, that was sacrilege. That was absolute sacrilege. I remember my dad being like, "Oh, I liking Ron Paul because of like saying things like I want to abolish the IRS," and my dad's kind of libertarian leaning and like I hate taxes. But then when he said the stuff about the war, it was like, oh no, he went too far. Like, no, you don't disrespect the troops, man, and their sacrifice. They're out there fighting for our freedom and trying to keep the terrorists from attacking us. And I know like that was really effective messaging for me growing up, and I'm sure you too. Like a lot of us who were young when 9/11 happened. I mean, that was a very formative thing. A very a lot of fear mongering that grew out of that. And Ron was one of the first. I'm not saying he wasn't the first. There was a lot of people out there calling attention to the military-industrial complex, calling attention to the fact that 9/11 and the war on terror, like these things weren't unconnected, and there was a greater kind of like state conspiracy going on here. But Ron was like the first one to, I think, bring such national attention to it and to get a lot of people to wake up. And for some reason, and that's what we're going to talk about next, and I'm glad Adam's here to talk about it. For some reason, there's a lot of people in the party that seem to not like Ron Paul, and I don't get it. Like it completely baffles. I'm not saying everybody has to like say Ron Paul is my favorite libertarian. Like, I don't care if somebody says this is what brought me to libertarianism and I like this guy better and like whatever. But when you go out of your way to shit on Ron Paul, that's where I start to go, I'm kind of questioning if you're actually a libertarian now. Like if Ron Paul offends you and makes you have to go out of your way to shit on him and to shit on people who were brought to libertarianism by him, I'm not sure where your priorities are, dude.
I think it's if the Federal Reserve is not your issue, if that's not it, cool. That's cool. You might want to revisit it, but if that's not your issue, right on. I think everybody should be on the war one. That's gonna be hard. But if you don't like his issue, if his issues aren't your issues, if that's not your focus, that's fine. But to say then that all he did was offer the solution that liberty should be the answer to these things. The war issue, we should stop using aggressive force to go and commit aggressive wars. The war on drugs, he should stop compelling people to go to jail for using let liberty be the solution. Let liberty decide if people want to go to war.
Wait, that's what he said? That sounds like a Republican to me. That sounds nothing like libertarian.
Right.
That sounds like a racist bigot. Only racist bigots would say that stuff, Rob.
If his position on every turn was to let liberty decide, to not compel, to not use government force to achieve ends, which is simply the non-aggression principle, I have a very difficult time finding where the issue comes from.
Let's get Adam in now that he's done breaking shit.
Dude, that was wild. I couldn't fix it, and we had it was like all King's horses and fucking King's men here
I
trying
was
to.
sitting here like cracking up, like
I couldn't stop
just
laughing.
watching you. You're just like spinning
people
your
are
mic
walking
around.
My producers
and round.
walking in front of my camera. It's a fucking mess here. I told you guys. It's look. No one gives a shit. No one cares. No one cares what's happening over here. It's a fucking mess. Anyway, I'm wearing my Ron Paul hat right now. You guys can't really see it, but it's a cartoon Ron Paul.
Oh, it's nice.
It's a cartoon. Yeah, no. As I said before, he's definitely the guy who brought me into the party too. But as Rob was saying too, if I don't understand, like, he's not a controversial fit. If you at all align yourself with like the idea of just liberty and freedom, and he's like, "Hey man, we should be free," and you're like, "That's fucking crazy." Well, I don't know. There's other parties for you. You know, I don't understand the disconnect. He's not saying radical shit. He's saying very sane shit, first of all. And on top of that, he's saying sane things that we should be saying as libertarians regardless. Every libertarian should hold that true to their belief, like no war, unless, whatever. But like, no war is stop the drug war. More individual liberties. Like, I don't understand the problems with these things that people have against him. It's because he's not their guy, and we all know why. It's just...
Well, what we're going to do, if Rob's up for it, Rob had the idea that he was going to role play a Ron Paul hater and try to like steel man, try to like play devil's advocate to be like, to try to like be fair. Like maybe there's something we're missing. So like, so Rob, put on your cathedral hat and become a Ron Paul hater.
Well, now that you say it, I was trying to think about it. I can't remember what their beef. I mean, he was a Republican, right?
Yeah, so that's like number one. It's like well, Ron Paul's not a libertarian; he's a Republican. It's like cool. So I guess Justin Amash isn't a libertarian, and
right.
So you're agreeing with us that Gary Johnson and what's his name, Bill Weld, are not libertarian. Like anyone who was ever a Republican is disqualified from being a libertarian. So okay.
Yeah,
we've eliminated over half the party.
I totally just blanked on this because I had a whole thing set up, but God damn it, I have no idea why people be against it.
It's like now that you get to it, it's like, wait, no, actually, I'm not retarded, so I can't remember why people hate Ron Paul. Oh God, I'm sure people are going to take offense to that, but I don't know.
I just said it about 100 times in my podcast just now. It's Obama comic. It's different.
Right, I was gonna say, like you have given me the freedom, Adam, to use that word again. I've always been so afraid to use it. I'm like, yeah, but like if I use it once, Adam said it like 100 times probably in the past 10 minutes. So he'll take all the heat for me.
I always say this. In fact, a lot of comics will. Doug Stanhope, I think it was him years ago, wrote like that open letter about that word, and like how it's not about the people, and it's about any word we come up with for someone who's less mentally handicapped, we would use as a slur. It doesn't matter. So you could call it flippity floppity do, and we would start being like, look at these flippity floppity doos. It doesn't matter. So anyway, he wrote a really good open letter, and even like professors of like literature and stuff are like, yeah, he has a point. It's like
right.
It is what it is. It's not, it's language is silly.
Yeah, right.
You know what I think it actually might be is that he was better at it than the Libertarian Party.
Oh,
that's it, dude. Nailed it.
And jealousy.
They did not like that.
Well, I'll tell you what I hear the most. What I hear the most is Ron Paul was actually just a racist and a bigot. Like that's what I hear from a lot. Well, I mean, I don't even think it's actually a lot of people statistically. It's just that they're loud in the Ron Paul hating crowd.
But Jacob, that's what we hear. We hear that. We hear it's the same people saying the same stuff to us.
Right.
It doesn't change. It's just that he's somebody important. We're not. It's all the differences, but we are part of the same camp. So we get blended. It doesn't matter. It's the same tactic.
The only circumstantial evidence you may even have towards that was the Ron Paul report, that was done under his name that everybody knows wasn't done through him, so if you want to attach that association, that's going to be a really weak one in my mind.
It's like anyway, people who go after Tom Woods for the League of the South shit, and it's like, all right, like here, okay, people are allowed to develop and get better over time, and like, yeah, turns out maybe like in the late 80s and early 90s, people had slightly different worldviews and beliefs than they do now.
Yeah,
like. Is that shocking? Is that surprising? Like,
No,
is that like,
no, not at all.
you know what I mean?
If we all looked at it, like I'm 34, I'll be 35 in November. If 24-year-old me is a stupid, dumb person who barely should be able to do anything. Like 10, and I'm dumb now. But like 10 years ago, 10 years ago, I was even dumber. So like the fact I look back at myself in my 20s, I'm like, wow, how the hell did I get to where I am now? Like, so everyone's allowed to develop. If we never had that chance, if everyone's just always like cancel every time,
it's not the cancel.
We would never grow.
What they want. Here's the problem. I really think the people that hate, and there's two camps here. There's people who are just like, I think, like bitter towards Ron Paul and how much people admire him and talk about how they brought him to the movement, but they probably aren't the same as the people who are like rabidly hating on him, like, oh, he's a racist, he's a bigot, and whatever. We might want to touch on that, the other group, the non, like the less hateful haters too, a little bit, but the ones that are really hateful, like the ones like he's a racist, he's a bigot, those are mostly the woke people. And the problem is, like, with these leftists, I'm sorry, they're leftists. What they want from you is to never stop apologizing. They want you to bow to them. They want you to bow to the mob of social media and social justice. And what they want people to do is to basically never stop virtue signaling about I did this bad thing, 10, 15 years ago, and I need to keep apologizing for it over and over and over again. And I need to scream at the top of my lungs every minute of every day about how offended I am at these things that I don't like. And, for people that aren't deranged by this stupid, cult, you know what I mean? They're like, oh, well, then you must be like, if you don't just on demand sit here and say, I condemn everything that I demand you condemn, then you must love those things.
Yeah.
When it's actually like, well, actually, no, like the reason I'm not doing it is because I don't feel like playing this stupid fucking game with you, because like you don't have a right to come here and sit here and go, well, I demand that you rebuke these people and these things. Otherwise, we're just going to start going out there and like, give me one example where somebody actually like even concedes a little bit to these people. And they like, I've tried, it doesn't work. Like when you try to go, okay, you know what? Maybe I was wrong about that. Or yeah, maybe this person isn't as good as I thought. Or yeah, maybe this idea this person had, this thing they said wasn't nice. Like, does that get them to?
They can't let you even slip into the crack to start to pry open their baseless position, because if for even one moment they acknowledge you might have a point, now they have to talk about their point. So they can't even let you in to be acknowledged of what you're saying, because the moment that they do, they have just as you were talking about the argumentation ethic, the moment that they acknowledge your position, now they've got to consider it. They've got to bring it in, and they can't allow that to happen, because anybody who's listening is going to clearly see.
Well, and they're almost, the woke ideology is almost brilliant in that they play it the right way, which is you never play defense. They are always on offense, and that's what's brilliant about woke ideology. And that's why like the only response to that is either to ignore them, or you have to beat them at that. You have to never ever ever play defense. You have to play offense twice as hard as them.
Dude, they're like they're like the cult circa 2005, dude. They're just fucking slinging TDs. Peyton Manning's back there in his prime, dude. Yeah, it's like you're right. And we have to be like the 2002 Tampa Bay Bucks defense. You have to like shut down, like that's what we have to do. It's like the Bucks or the Ravens of 2000. It's like so what are we doing this down? Blitz everybody. Right. What about I gotta be my boy John Lynch. I gotta take these motherfuckers out. I gotta stop them. You can't let them go deep on you. Well, I always love like those defenses. They're like, we don't care if you get a deep bomb on us. Our goal is just to hit you. That's how I played football a lot growing up.
It's like our goal is not to actually stop you from getting yards. It's to make you like every snap is like
yards you get.
Regret that you're out there on the field still.
Dude, I grew up. So I played safety for like 12 fucking years. And I grew up watching John Lynch. He's my favorite player, John Lynch. So I was like, I'm going to grow up hitting people like he did. And that's what I did. I just launched my body into people like a psycho. That's why I have CTE. Hey.
Yeah. Oh
So,
God.
Jacob, I just wanted to comment a bit on the root cause of these things, especially from the left, where you were kind of touching on it a bit. But you know where I think the real dissension comes from people who would identify on the left is that we are unapologetic capitalists.
Yeah.
And that word has been so demonized and so vilified that you can't, even if the the sentiment the person is looking for is the capitalist answer, that you can't use the word. So I think the fact that, as you know, the Mises Caucus namesake, that we are pure, unadulterated capitalists, and and it's preaching it vigorously. I think that is where the refusal to hear anymore or consider us comes from, because that word is
Yeah,
not.
I mean, like Dave Smith was once talking about how he was so scared when he started going on all these mainstream channels, and he was like, "Do I need to go in prepared and have my talking points and try to control the narrative?" And then he thought back to like when Ron Paul was running, and people were trying to make him do that, and he said, "Listen, here's what I'm going to do. I know about the wars. I know about what's wrong with our foreign policy. I know about the negative effects on the war on drugs. I know about the Federal Reserve and why that's at the center of all this corruption and tyranny and devastation. I'm just going to go out there and talk about what I know, and I'm just going to tell the truth." And that is what the Mises Caucus is the, we it's like Dave says, we are basically the like the Ron Paul Revolution 2.0. We're the inheritors of that, of what Ron Paul started. And what we do is we just tell the truth. We don't hide from the principles. And like maybe sometimes we will even like autistically cling to the principles, and like we'll say them, you know what I mean? Like, so like,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm not saying that there aren't times where maybe people go so hard balls to the wall on like, here's libertarianism unadulterated, that it probably does scare some people off. And I'm not saying that, the first conversation you have with like a soccer mom is legalize heroin. Like, probably, maybe that's not the first conversation you should have.
Well,
first take her out on a date, bring her back to your house, shoot up some heroin, and then talk to her about it.
if Ron Paul
Right,
could
like an
do it
adult.
in South Carolina, I think that you can get the mom on heroin. I mean,
I start with we should put all pedophiles and wood chippers and legalize all drugs. I have a list
Dude,
of order things they do.
I got my wife to listen to that song, the wood chipper go burr song.
Oh, yeah.
She loves it. We've been just like singing
Yeah.
it to each other for the past week.
Yeah. Well, I don't even think it's that you don't want to tell somebody the message they're not looking for. You want to find somebody's message, but and then not hide from the libertarian message. Like, you don't put the most beautiful philosophical political theory ever devised away when that's your position. We have this thing, and we're being ashamed to say it. So when you find out what somebody's issue is, tell them what it is. and that's how we're going to make them a libertarian.
Well, it's just like, and like this is speaking to like a broader, like I think the second group of people who criticize Ron Paul and also criticize the Mises Caucus, and like, over the past week or two, especially, during like LNC meetings and posts on Facebook and stuff, and there's conversations about like, like I know Jen Moore made a post the other day after like me, Joe Wagner, other people, like she kind of, I think she kind of twisted a little bit what we were doing to say that like we were attacking the strategy of the LPPA, or saying that what they were doing didn't matter and our candidates didn't matter, which is not at all what we were saying. What we were saying was that like, let's not act like we got a, I'm going to be blunt here. Let's not act like we got a big fucking dick when we're like still in like kindergarten. Okay. Like we're not even kindergarten. We're in preschool. Okay. As far as like where we are as a party. So like, let's not act like, we're all tough and we got it all figured out. And like, we're ready to go play in the major leagues yet. Like, cause we're nowhere close. I'm not saying, listen, you want to build people up and encourage them and be like, hey, we did the Molten maneuver. And it's like, listen, do the Malt maneuver. I'm all for it. I'm doing it. I'm going to get signatures and be a constable in my borough. Because it's like, it's a good way to get,
no, kidding.
yeah, you nerd. This is like Josh Smith ascends down from the heavens. Nerd. And it's like, I'm doing it kind of like as an act of good faith, even just to be like, listen, this is a good way for people to learn the process, to get them involved and to get them ready to do bigger things in the future. It's a good stepping stone, but that is what it is. Like, I don't go out there and brag about my kid like he's Tony Hawk because he's riding a bike with training wheels. Okay. Like, yes, I, to my kid, applaud him and give him tons of praise as a good parent to like build him up and to get him encouraged to learn riding that bike better and whatnot. But like, he's not, a professional bike trickster yet. You know what I mean? Like, so we
no
have
one
to,
is, that's not a thing, but
or I mean, there's no training wheels for skateboards. So I was like trying to make, I don't know, I guess a scooter. Okay. Like riding a scooter is not being Tony Hawk. Okay. Like when you first learn to ride a scooter and you're kind of like learning how to ride something like that, like, well, the handlebar is kind of like a training wheel. It was like, but just because my kid figured out how to ride a scooter doesn't mean he's freaking Tony Hawk right now. Okay. Like, so, you have to learn you do have to crawl before you walk. But let's pump the brakes on, like, what I don't like is what it looks like the self-aggrandizing and the circle jerk. And it's just like, and I get it. Like, they want to put out a positive message, an image. They want to make the party look good, but it's like, don't oversell. People don't, like, you obviously don't want to undersell and make your, like, you want to market well, but when you overmarket and you oversell what you do, people get pissed off. They're like, you sold me that you were this, and this, but really, like, you're still figuring shit out.
When you underdeliver, they feel cheated.
Exactly.
I also think, and maybe you guys covered this already, I don't know, because I jumped in bed late, but I was just talking about this with Dan Smots, my podcast. But like we were saying how, Pennsylvania brags, we're the most elected libertarians, but it's like, yeah, but like 400 of those are uncontested races.
Exactly. So, like, when
I'm sorry, before I lose my thought, I'm sorry because I have brain trauma.
Yeah.
Hold on. So on top of that, so we have like 400 uncontested races. One, who gives a shit, and then not who gives, you know what I mean. And then the second part of that is like, okay, but look at those positions. It's like auditor or like douchebag of douchebags. Like, how does this promote liberty? It doesn't do anything for liberty. It's nonsense.
Authority. It's the positions of authority that the authoritarians don't want.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's like, so I'm like, okay, we're elected him, great. But how does auditor help promote liberty? It doesn't. What we're doing right now promotes more liberty. What we do on podcast promotes more liberty than an auditor at a fucking local borough. There's no way that we don't.
Don't get me wrong here. What they're doing with the Malt maneuver is not. It certainly should not be the focus. But there's not a total lack of value into it, because if you have other things moving, if you have people coming into the party, if you have campaigns running, getting attention, and you can use you can take the soundbite and say, and we have this many people getting elected, it's a support, it's a fluffer really, but it certainly shouldn't be the focus and where we spend all of the party's money and all of the party's efforts focusing on going, because at the end of the day, all it gets you is a bunch of people in a position that nobody wanted.
Well, like, and the reason, like, the reason we even talk about this is not because we oppose the Malt maneuver. It's not because we don't want people to get elected. What this really comes down to is a difference in strategy. And we talked about this with Jen Moore when she was on. And it's like, I don't hate Jen Moore, like, and we had a little bit of, it was like me, Joe Wagner, Jen Moore, some other usual suspects on Facebook going back and forth. And like, it got a little heated and contentious there. And I don't hate people, and it wasn't anything personal, but like, I need to be honest about what my feelings are. And I'm not going to, like, I don't want to sugarcoat things and beat around the bush. It's not that I'm not trying to be mean. But I just think that what we at the Mises Caucus, what our focus is not on winning elections. Like, that is not our axiom. That's not our goal. That's not our, like, what we're seeking, what we're pursuing. electing people can be a means to that. But that's not like when people say the purpose of the party is to elect people. It's like, I mean, yeah, politics is about electing people, but like we're libertarians. So like, like the Libertarian Party should be about libertarianism, right? Like it should represent the philosophy.
So,
what we want to do is actually like the Libertarian Party, the purpose of it is not just to win elections. That is the means. Don't confuse the ends with the means, okay? The means of the Libertarian Party is to run candidates, to put out a good message through the party affiliates and through the candidates, and to run people and either like run them and the message is good, or to run them and win and try to affect public policy. But those are all the means. Those are not the ends that we're pursuing. The ends we're pursuing is a libertarian society. It's bringing people into the liberty movement. It's growing the number of libertarians, because guess what? If 99% of the country or the society aren't libertarian, then you're not going to have a libertarian society. You're not going to have freedom. You're going to have a hard time ending the wars. You're going to have a hard time. And like if 99% of people think people should be locked up in a cage for smoking marijuana, that's what's going to happen. If 99% of people think it's okay to drop bombs on people because they're in another country and they're against your nation's interests, that's going to happen. Like what we have to do is affect the culture. What we have to do is change people's hearts, change people's minds. And the way that we now, and there's many ways to do that. We don't all have to do the same thing. The Libertarian Party is just the political wing of the libertarian movement. And yes, the means of it is politics, but those are not the ends.
Well, I want to stop you right there, because I've been saying this for quite a while now, that I think that the Mises Caucus methodology and the formerly Pragmatic Caucus methodology actually can serve as complementary units heading towards the same end. Because one thing that we're failing to do is identify. We should be running a candidate in every possible chance that we have, but one of the main roles that we should do in finding a candidate is deciding if this is a winnable or a unwinnable election, because you run those in a different way. And on an unwinnable election, you get a candidate who speaks the fervorous message, just to speak as loud and as fast as many people as you can, and a candidate who has a viable chance of winning. You run an election in a different way. So I think these avenues are available, and there's a reason for both of them, and you should apply them when the situation calls for it. Because there will be times when the abrupt messaging isn't the right place for what some soft ass community or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's just like, if I had a choice between like tomorrow we could have 1,000 people win libertarian positions in office, or we could get 10,000 new libertarians, I'd pick 10,000 new libertarians. It's like, now I think that these things can go hand in hand. I don't think that, again, like the division of labor is part of libertarianism, which is like, it's part of capitalism. It's part of free markets, which is like, you can achieve at like the final product of something in a market often has different people who are specializing in different things. And then those things come together to produce a product. Like one of the most common analogies of this is like the pencil. And, like Fee has talked about this. Tom Woods has talked about this. Like so many economists and people have talked about how, like use the pencil analogy to describe the division of labor. And it's like, if everybody made the wood part of the pencil and nobody made the graphite or the paint or the eraser or the other things, you wouldn't have pencils. So yeah, like everybody needs to do what they're good at and what they want to specialize in. And I'm not trying to tell the Libertarian Party nationally or here in Pennsylvania, don't run people for office. What I'm saying is, don't lose sight of what the purpose is. And the problem is like incentives. If you say the purpose of the party is just to win elections, that's a dangerous incentive, because what you're doing is you're removing your axiom from what you're basically, when you make the means your end, you're not grounded in your ethics. You're not grounded in what makes you libertarian. I'm not here to
means, and then you apply whatever easiest means there will be.
Right. Like, I'm not here to create a triopoly. I'm not here to just give people a third option. I'm not here to just lower, like, my goal. Like, it's not like I'm a libertarian because my ultimate goal was to reduce the tax rate from 35% to 32.5%. You know what I mean? Like, my goal was not to give people, like, it's not like the thing I go out preaching is like, you know what we absolutely positively need? We need school vouchers. That's the most important thing in America right now. You know, the most important thing we need right now is, you know, to get on the council and fight on the council about zoning laws. It's like, no, listen, all of those things are, like, you know, violations of liberty, but it's like, stop making the low-hanging fruit and stop making the means your ends.
It's seeking, you know, claiming some type of you know, advantage by, I'm not going to be as horrible as the last guy. I'm not going to be as bad. I'm just going to have this much, you know,
it's lesser of three evils instead of two evils.
Right. Yeah. Can we stop? Yeah, never mind.
Adam, you got anything to say? I've been yelling for a while.
Now you guys got pretty much everything I think anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, so, but this is what it's all about. It's like, we don't oppose the molten manure. We don't oppose people doing these things. It's just like, the reason the Mises Caucus formed, the reason why we criticize, is not because we are anti-libertarian. Like, we're saying, like, we think the reason, like, let's be honest, like, the Libertarian Party has not been successful. And, like, you know, Jen said this, other people said this in the posts. They were like, well, you know, young bucks always try to come in and shake things up, but, like, so, you know, people, you know, give them grace, but also, like, the new people, you know, recognize that the old guard's been a while and we've learned some things, and, you know, the hard way, and that we have wisdom to offer. And I'm like, okay, like, in general, yeah, I kind of think learn from your elders, but also, like, look at what they've accomplished. And it's like, if my goal was, like, to actually grow the liberty movement and to actually try to, like, but not probably have liberty in my lifetime, but maybe in my kids or my grandkids' lifetime, well, the Libertarian Party hasn't done that. You guys haven't done that. So, like, I'm not going to really, like, leave it up to you when you've not shown that you could be successful in doing that. I'm not saying that you haven't tried. I'm not saying I'm not saying we should purge you from the party. I'm just saying, don't just tell us, like, well, you're young and coming in here, and, like, we're older and been here longer. So, like,
we shouldn't do it your way because you don't do it. We don't have to do it your way because you've been here the longest.
Right.
Yeah.
I learned a bit of wisdom at a pretty young age, and it was that, you know, if you want to do something, the first step should be to look at somebody who has accomplished what you're attempting to do, and then follow their example.
You know who's done what we want to do?
Yeah, if you know, if I had to think in the last ever, who created the most libertarians ever? Who, if I had to think who that would be,
it was Bill Weld.
Yeah, Bill Weld.
It was Ron Paul. This is why we talk about Ron Paul, because it's like, hey, we want to grow the liberty movement. Like, oh, who's done that in the past 2 decades?
Well, the Republican Party didn't want us because we were better at it than them. The Libertarians don't want us because,
well, and this is like, listen, if
we just need a home, we need a home.
If the Libertarian Party isn't about, like, what we're talking about here, if you guys are like, no, like, we're not about growing the liberty movement, and no, we're not about, like, pushing the philosophy. We just want to be a third option. We just want to win elections. We want to just, like, make things marginally better, lower the tax rate 5%, and talk about zoning laws. It's like, cool, just go be Republicans. Like, honestly, like, your goals would be better accomplished in the Republican Party. Like,
I say that about, like, a lot of the left-leaning libertarians. I'm like, go to the Green Party, go to Democrat. Like, what are you doing? Like if you want to focus on identity politics and other fucking woke shit, hey, man, this isn't for you. Move the fuck on. Kick bricks, kick rocks, dude. Like, go somewhere else. Go somewhere else where they give a shit. Like, it's like we have other things we care about more. It's more important to everybody.
There is other quite more imminent threats.
What I'm saying,
than,
way more important things going on.
Yeah.
That's
like
that affect everybody.
The continued genocide of the Middle East.
Yeah,
we're finally starting to see the real effects of the inflation hitting on a visible level. You know what I mean? That there are what I think 100 and or 1.4 million people or something like that locked in jail for nonviolent drug offenses.
that's fucking bananas.
This is it's
And you know what I get sometimes is like people, when I go on about this, people will tell me, "Oh, but Jacob, but Rob, people don't care about that. They just care about their own lives and like, like that's why we should focus on school vouchers." And it's like,
then why are we caring about who's getting bullied then if we don't care about other people? Like why? Oh man.
and I'm like, but it's like, so what you're saying is you don't care,
right? Yeah.
because if you're saying, well, people don't care, like, well, you know what? Like, if you cared, you wouldn't say that, because like I get that people don't care, but they should. And the only way that I'm going to wake them up is by being as loud as I can about why they should.
Right.
And by, whistleblowing and yelling and screaming as loud as I can about, all this horrible, evil shit that's going on. You know what I mean? So like, if you're saying, well, people don't care about that, what you're saying is you don't care about that.
Yeah.
And so, this isn't everybody in the Libertarian Party, by the way. Like, there are plenty of people in the Libertarian Party who aren't part of the Mises Caucus who work with us and we have good relationships with, and that have no problem with us. And I think their priorities are much more aligned with ours and that we can work together.
Yeah.
But these conflicts we're having with other people in the party, like this right here that we just laid out, I think this is the problem. And I just think, like I just want someone to tell me where I'm wrong. Like, why can't you just do what you're doing through the Republican Party? If you're just about like the most minute of incremental changes, and you're just about the most like, we don't want to offend people, we don't want to rock the boat, we don't want to push the philosophy, we just want to win elections, and we just want to get, it's like, cool, we'll just go flood the Republican Party local stuff and get people elected and do that. You know what I mean? Like,
well, Jacob, they can't do what they're trying to do because you're a racist. That's why.
Yeah, it's a lot of projection. You notice, you know what I'm saying? Like they're the ones to fucking call us racist, us misogynist, us whatever. Then I look around our group chats, look around our meetings. I'm like, oh, we have all the women and people of color, and you guys are just a bunch of angry white dudes. That's weird.
I had
and you happen to be fat too. It's also weird, but whatever. It's like it's just like you. It's that typical mold of like you hate stereotyping people, but like that shit exists for a reason. And you're like, oh, you look at a lot of these fucking like again the cathedral people, and you're like, yeah, you look like that. Of course you do. Like, of course you look like that. Like, you all look the same. They all have the same fucking avatar. Like, it's like goofy fucking. I'm with the cat. Or like I have anime, my avatar. I'm like, yeah, we get it, man. Like, just say what you're gonna say. Like, we all know what you're gonna say.
But you know what? There are people in the Mises Caucus who have more of a like left social bend, or have more of a like. There's a variety of people in the Mises Caucus. The difference is like people of different backgrounds in the Mises Caucus. We don't come to the party and come to the caucus and try to make our cultural, our religious, our particular like beliefs and push them into the Libertarian Party or movement, because like that's like,
dude,
not really
you know how many times a week I have to I look at people and go, that guy's fucking crazy, but I can't say it out loud because it's like whatever. But I go, but I also go, well, I don't care because he's not affecting me in any way or affecting my liberty. But I still go, no, that guy's fucking crazy.
You know, they claim us to be, you know, race. Where these ad hominems come in is where we're asking for pure, true liberty across the board, where they're willing to use, you know, state compulsion for it. If we're not saying that you can use force to require people to not be bigoted, if that is if you say you can't use force for that, then now by extension we are the discriminators. So it's unfortunate that it comes to that, especially in the Libertarian Party, when they just portraying the principles, but you know.
Yeah, no, and it's like, lost my train of thought there. We're getting close to the end here, but yeah, I mean, just like the last thing I wanted to say. I mean, like, you know, I had Reed on my personal podcast 2 days ago, Reed Coverdale, and you know, we were talking about this too. It's just like everyone has this perception that everyone in the Mises Caucus is exactly the same, which is like nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, like, you know, I'm a Christian conservative, and I've encountered plenty of atheists who are more like, you know, completely, you know, it's like different religious views. I've met people who are kind of more like socially progressive, and I'm not as socially progressive. I mean, it's like, you know, basically it's like the people you're talking about, Adam and Rob, are like, what they're doing is no different than if I came in and was like, we all need to pray and go to church together. And like, basically, like if I tried to make all of you say the Libertarian Party has to be Christian, if you guys aren't all doing my Christian thing with me, then you're bad libertarians. And everyone would be like, no, like you're a Christian and that's fine, but like you can't make all of us be Christians. And you know, I'd be like, oh, you're right. Like that's, you know, that's my bad. Like I fucked up. I tried conflating two different things together. But the woke people and a lot of people on the left, and, you know, I'm not saying it never happens on the right, but the main problem I'm seeing right now in the here and now in the Libertarian Party and movement is people on the left who want to conflate neoliberalism and culturally left stuff with the Libertarian movement, the message, and the party. And basically, the only thing that the Mises Caucus is really united on is saying, no, fuck that. Like that's like Dave said, like we reject the woke shit and we reject that mentality. Like if you want to be privately a social justice warrior, you want to do that kind of stuff in your own time, that's fine. Nobody cares what you do in your own time. But when you conflate the liberty movement and the Libertarian Party and messaging with your own private shit and then demand other people do it too, because like, you know, like I go out as a Christian and talk about like why other Christians should be libertarians. And like, you know, like I do, some people could say I'm conflating those two things, but like, I'm not saying everybody has to be like me. It's just like, I'm going out and just trying to appeal to people who are like-minded to me. If you want to do that, that's fine. But not everybody's like you, dude. Like, I don't know what else to say.
So, Jake, do you know one thing that I have found is common across almost all Mises members that I have seen? There is one common trait that I've seen almost everywhere is the genuine commitment to civil discourse within each other. I mean, what hasn't been talked about in the Mises chats, and it is always a meritorious, good faith debate. I haven't seen it turn into
when people are sober. Right. Yes.
Hey, listen. It is what it is. We all knew it. We all knew it. We all knew what was happening. I just looked away like a fucking like a bad husband. I was like, "Hey, he's hitting her, whatever." So he just turned away. It's like, yeah, he was a little drunk that night in the chat. It is what it is. Yeah, it happens. Like, it happens. Fuck, I was probably gonna say, God damn it. Oh, I remember what I was gonna say. No, this is something that annoys me too. Again, talking about all that projection and woke bullshit. It was like, these people will have on Twitter, you will see accounts that are not affiliated with us, that are essentially troll accounts, will say something like mean to like a cathedral guy, and they'll be like, LP Mises Caucus, would you condemn this? It's like, you don't condemn anything that we get called. I never see.
Yeah, tell you what,
I don't want them to, because I'm a fucking man, you know, so I don't care. I'm also a comic and it rolls off my it's funny to me. Like, I like that shit. I don't even get mad. It's very funny to me. But like, that's me. I'm a comic. I roll in that shit. Like, a lot of other people, like, that's not their world. And like, what you say that to them, they're like, hey, what you're saying is really hurting my feelings. Like, you know, but these people, they don't give a shit. They'll come after people's kids, their fucking wives, and all behind the goddamn troll account, which is that bothers me because it's cowardice. And again, man. So, you know, if I have a problem with you, I'm saying it to your fucking face. But like, yeah, if they do attack me, I laugh because it doesn't bother me. But like, these scumbags do it to people like who have regular jobs, regular lives, and like all behind the keyboard warrior shit. And that's what drives me nuts. And if we ever find out who some of these people are, they're gonna have a problem. You know what I'm saying? It's like they got a problem on their hands.
Well, you know what's funny? It's like, you know, you can usually, like, if there's like two people that had like some kind of falling out, and you ever wonder, like, I wonder who was in the right and who was in the wrong. almost always, like I'm sure it's not 100% of the time, probably at least 9 out of 10 times, the person going around bitching the most about the other person is the person that was in the wrong. You know what I mean? Like
what they
the
remind me
person,
of? I'm
because
sorry,
like
Jay, go
people
ahead.
that are in the right, they usually are like, it's like they're knowing in the right, but like it's just human nature. Like you don't want to go air dirty laundry. You kind of want to be the bigger person. It's like when there's a breakup, and one person breaks up with the other person and kind of like stays silent. They go kind of take care of their shit. Maybe they go adopt 7 kids, and grow their family and stuff. I'm not mentioning anyone specific here or anything, of course. And then there's like, the ex going around and like calling this person a thief and a liar and a misogynist and an awful person, making up all these stories and not bringing up any evidence about it. And just literally anytime this person's name is brought up, literally like the eyes roll into the back of their head and they like have a freaking like, hissy fit. It's like, okay, well, you're obsessing over this person and freaking out. And the other dude has got his shit together and is working his fucking ass off. I don't know. Like, I'm just making observations here. That's all I can say, right?
Know what they remind me of?
Observation. It kind of
sorry.
reminds me of that observation. Kind of reminds me of like the Bible, where God's just talking all this trash, and Satan's just sitting there taking it like a man, and then just like, you know what? I'm better than this.
Oh my god!
Hold on, that's a whole podcast. I don't want to be involved.
This whole burn book, the great deceiver, whatever. Oh, and you know what? Just turn the other cheek.
No, I definitely won't get involved in that. I don't give a shit. But I will say.
Rob's throwing some hands down.
He's stirring the pot for sure.
Okay, I started it. I insulted Pittsburgh earlier.
Well, that's fair. They're trash. I'm from New York. I'm also trash. It's fine. But no, this is what they remind me of. So like, because we're all on the same team, right? So I grew up playing football, and this is what it reminds me of. If you guys grew up playing team sports, there was always a kid who would like bitch about every drill you had to do, every exercise you had to do. There was always an excuse for why they couldn't catch the ball, why they weren't a starter, why they couldn't run as fast as you, why they couldn't tackle as good as you. But they were stuck around all 4 years of high school. Like they still were on the team. They stuck around, but they bitched off, and they were like on the team, but they weren't on the team because no one respected them. But they were on the team. That's what they remind me of. They remind me of those kids in the football team who's like, I'm like, are you going to fucking run with us? He's like, oh, I hurt my knee. I'm going to walk outside. I'm going to walk the field. But and then he's like, why aren't I playing? I'm like, because you fucking can't catch a ball. But it's not our fault that we're better than you.
Or it's like the person that's always got drama with someone. It's like, oh, I can't come hang out because I'm mad at this person, or I'm pissed because it's like, if you're always mad at people, it reminds me of something Jordan Peterson said, where it's just like, when he was talking about incels and like men who are like involuntary and celibate, like they can't find a woman, like all the women reject me. And Jordan Peterson's like, if all the women are rejecting you, maybe might be something you need to look in the mirror about. You know what I mean? It's like it's not all the women. Dude, it's like if you're having problems and drama with everybody and you end up hating everybody and you keep on saying, oh, this person was a friend and they betrayed me and this person was a friend and they did this, it's like, maybe you're just a trashy person that nobody actually wants to be friends with. I don't know.
When guys act like that, I just call that bitch energy, because that's what that is. It's like I know it's whatever, but like that's what it's like that. It's like that. You shouldn't be doing that. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like figure it out, look inward, be a goddamn adult, be a man, and be like, oh, I gotta fix who the fuck I am. If I have no fucking friends, if I can't get a relationship, grow up, figure it out. Like we're all trash. Like we're all sophisticated trash. So like mold your trash better, dude. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like just figure it out. That's it. But like the lack of caring or lack of willing to figure it out, that's where that energy comes from, and I cannot stand it. It's like that I'm a good guy energy. It's like, how come the girls like the bad guys, and it's like I'm always there. It's like, because you're a bitch. It's bitch energy. That's why, and no one wants that. Like, take charge. Like, do something. Do something that someone's gonna look at and be like, oh wow, that's like something I can admire. Or just don't sit in and sulk and blame others. It's the weakest. Yeah, it's the weakest. I just hate it.
Yeah, and it's just like people like, there's people like I know like Pete Quajones and I had like an argument like a month ago, and like he was kind of a dick to me, but like I just let it go. It's like I don't know, like
He's doing my podcast soon.
yeah, like I mean I have disagreements with Pete, but it's just like why would I waste time being upset about like this dumb interaction we had where he was mean to me? It's just like okay, like whatever. Like I'd go out and have a drink with him tomorrow or have him on my podcast tomorrow. It's like whatever. We had a disagreement, we had a little spat, and I feel like it's not even like some people say it's men that do this. I'm like, no, it's just adults. Adults can have a fight and then the next day go like hang out and be like, oh, like we're cool. You know what I mean? It's like that's how I am with everybody. I've gotten into fights with people. I've gotten into fights with like Mike in the past. I've gotten into fights with Luke in the past. We've had arguments even in our own little group before and things that happen. And it's just like we work it out. We get over it. We don't like holding grudges is such a waste of time and energy. So,
Jacob, I don't know if you know this, but you have a tiny murderer behind you.
I know. Yeah, he's gonna eat me as soon as I end the stream. That's why I'm not letting Rob go.
Cats freak me out. I'm a dog.
This is his first appearance. Like he's being bold. Like he's probably gonna murder me as soon as I turn. This off.
I know. It will. Cats are dicks.
All right. Well, I see guys. How much you guys love me. I guess we got to go. Well, thanks everybody for those who tuned in live and those watching afterwards. Make sure to this is what we're about. If this is the kind of stuff you like to listen to, make sure you subscribe. Make sure. I mean, if you haven't. Go to takehumanaction.com, sign up for the newsletter, maybe become a donor for as little as $5 a month to the Mises Caucus. And if you're here in PA especially, reach out to us. We'd love to, have you meet up with some of our, or get on to some phone calls and stuff with our state organizers. We can tell you about what's going on here in PA, candidates that are running, things that are going on, issue coalitions that are in the works. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we're doing that we got our hands in. And if this is the culture that you want to be a part of, people fighting for liberty and who are, we're going to roll our sleeves up, get our hands dirty and get shit done, then, this is the group for you. So come check us out, subscribe to the podcast. And, you guys got any last words?
Oh yeah. Real quick plug for myself. Chalfont, Pennsylvania, August 14th. We're running monthly comedy shows out of the Pop-In. Great bar. These sell out, and we get yelled at because they sell out. We had to turn away 30 people July 10th. All right, we're sorry. Listen, this is August 14th. Pop-In, Chalfont, PA, 7:30 show and a 9:30 show. Awesome group of comics. I'm hosting. Come on out. droptent.com/events for your tickets. Get them. They will sell out. And if they do, I don't know what to fucking tell you. Get your fucking tickets. That's it.
Cool. Rob, any last words?
Ron Paul wasn't wrong.
No, he was not. All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining me, and thanks everybody for watching, and everybody have a good rest of your night.